Thanks, Marie. I'd like to set the stage with just a little bit more about who I am. I am a daughter, sister, wife, mother, and sister-in-law to the people you see on the screen, and a friend, colleague, mentor, and student to many of you out there. I am also a person who loves to travel, explore the outdoors, knit, read. I'm someone many in the world define as disabled. However, I am still trying to figure out how I define that small aspect of my lived experience. I am someone who understands I am incredibly privileged to speak to you today in a place where the Dakota people have lived and been stewards of the land and waters for many thousands of years, and someone who understands I am part of a country that grew to what it is today on the backs of many people who had or still have no choice in the matter. And finally, the work I will share with you today has been developed in partnership with Anisha Gupta. It is really impossible to draw very many lines around the parts of the work that are completely hers, as opposed to the parts that are completely mine. I am sorry she is not here today to co-present with me. On the other hand, I am thrilled that she is on maternity leave, spending time developing a new identity, mother to Rhea Gupta Sherman. So now I ask you to imagine with me. Imagine the United States 40 years from now. I recognize this might be a very scary thing to ask you to do. These are pretty unsettling times, as we've been talking about. If we think only about what is happening in our professional world, there is plenty to get upset about. People are losing jobs, projects we have worked hard to get up and running are being shut down due to funding loss. Future funding for the work we have dedicated our lives to is uncertain. We are being told to rewrite history, celebrate those who have caused harm, and erase people we haven't even made adequate space for yet. If we turn our attention to things beyond what is impacting the conservation field, the world gets even bleaker. So why in the world would I ask you to imagine a world 40 years from now that has this foundation to build from? Because I want you to imagine a different world than the one that naturally grows from the current chaos. I want you to imagine the world where people from all walks of life are healthy and thriving and supporting each other. And in this world, the ability to care for treasured cultural heritage is freely available to all. When Anisha and I wrote our abstract for this talk 9 months ago, we were feeling like we had a small but very firm foundation on which a portion of the conservation part of this world could be built. We knew we had a long and growing list of partners laying their parts of the foundation, and we knew what our next steps would be. Today, we're feeling a little differently, but I am still going to tell you about that conservation world, what we know it can look like, and the steps we have already taken along the path to get there. For you to come along with me, I think you will probably need to let go of a little bit of skepticism and those feelings that things are never going to change and that we will never find the money to make all this happen. And for the next 20 minutes or so, really, what's the harm in doing that? So let's imagine that by 2065, 40 years from now, there is at least one conservator in every county in the United States. Those conservators are called community conservators, and they are embedded in public libraries. They are paid a salary through the library that reflects respect for the work they do and the resources that are needed for individuals and families to thrive. In these positions, they are providing free access to conservation knowledge, techniques, and skills. That access is available to anyone who wants it. Right now, we have located these conservators in public libraries for the reasons that you see on the screen. Libraries tend to be seen as welcoming, non-judgmental spaces. They have evolved from just providing printed material to providing all kinds of information. There are 2 initiatives going on in libraries that community conservators could very nicely connect with. There are maker spaces full of equipment and worktops where you could easily do conservation work. And libraries are developing libraries of things, so an easy way for conservators to loan out equipment that people might want to borrow. And then finally, a 2022 report said that 67% of libraries would like to create new roles in community engagement, outreach, and public programs. An awesome place for community conservators to be. But community conservators definitely don't have to be located in public libraries. They could be located in historical societies or museums, community centers, civic offices, religious institutions, archives, any institution that has a public-facing mission or wants to develop such a mission. What exactly would these community conservators do, you might ask? Well, they would do individual and group consultations on the care of personal and institutional items that could be brought to the library. They would make house calls to institutions or to people's home or to public sculpture in the park, things that couldn't be moved to the library. They would do disaster preparedness and response training, and maybe even more importantly, they'd be there to provide guidance when a disaster strikes. They would run workshops to teach material treatment skills and storage techniques to people of all ages in the form of single workshops, series, summer camps. They would provide open studio time where individuals and groups could bring their objects to the library and work on them with the assistance of a community conservator as needed. And so many more they could do so many more things that will empower people to confidently and proudly preserve their own stories. These are some of the groups of people that we expect a community conservator would support in each community that they're in. And now maybe you're wondering, where in the world are we going to find these conservators to fill positions in over 3,000 counties across the country? Well, we have some that would be ready to go, graduate trained conservators who are interested in being community conservators, technicians in museums and libraries and archives who already have the skills to be a community conservator, but I think it gives us the opportunity to develop new training paths as well. Distance learning options so that people can learn while remaining in their home communities, on-campus and distance learning options for library employees who want to take on this new role, a new undergraduate pathway that partners with education and social work as well as teaching conservation skills. And I know you're asking this question. We're going to have to go local, connect with local industries, banks, businesses, foundations, and city and county funding agencies. And while we are all keenly aware of how shaky our funding future is right now, for that reason, this may be a great time to figure out how to do this. This vision is in many ways very different than the conservation world I was trained to be part of during the time I worked toward my master's and my PhD at the Textile Conservation Center when I was in Winchester, England. And I think it's pretty safe to assume it's different than the vision most of you received during your training. It's also very different than the conservation world I have contributed to as a practicing textile and preventive conservator at Winterthur Museum, Garden, and Library. And again, I'm guessing the same is true for most of you. So where did it come from? Did Anisha and I sit on the patio dreaming up ideas for what we can do next? Maybe some days, and often with some of you out there. But really, it's the outcome of a few years of discussion and research and writing. I started actively and intentionally shaping my work to help me, and hopefully others, think about how conservation could continue to evolve. In 2019, when I was hired by the University of Delaware as a full-time professor with the privilege and responsibility to develop a research agenda. That agenda was shaped around finding answers to these two questions. There were, of course, lots of people asking these same questions well before me. I was definitely not alone in this endeavor, but we as a field had not found solutions, so I decided to join the effort. I set out to find answers to these two questions by following two different paths. One was to simply connect with people on the fringes or far outside the borders of the conservation field. My thinking was that those on the fringes might know what is getting in the way of them feeling included. Those far outside the field might be able to point out things that those of us inside just don't have the perspective to see. I did this connecting in many one-on-one meetings and also in 5 more formal settings that I call inclusive conservation practice research groups. The first 3 on this list had the greatest impact on the vision I have shared, so let me give you just a brief intro. Our first project was to bring together people currently underrepresented in the field of conservation and those with enough power in the field to implement change. You can read some of our takeaways in the open access article that you see at the bottom of the screen. The second project was focused on the whole international field of conservation and those who are connected to the field and often attend our conferences, but don't really feel like they are part of the conservation community. On the screen, you see the first page of our website that holds much of the project archive, and at its height, we had 4,000 active users from 73 countries. The final group focused on those well outside of the conservation field, and it included half-day discussions with 41 people from 21 departments at the University of Delaware and 9 community-focused organizations external to UD. The other path I took to seeking answers to my research questions was to use the practice of research, writing, and presenting to synthesize thoughts and ideas. A selection of the outcomes of this part of the work are seen on the screen, and you can find links to most of them on my website. 3 years of discussion focused our attention on these 4 things. There is a vast amount of heritage out there that is not getting the attention of conservators. Many people and organizations will never be in a place where they can prioritize paying for conservation. Libraries are generally seen as non-judgmental places to get information, while museums are viewed as unwelcoming to many. And there are many people who want to help others conserve their heritage, but our current system of graduate school and museum or private practice jobs does not work for them. So at this point, we had some focus, but also a nagging question. And well, honestly, many, many nagging questions, but only one I am going to highlight today. And that question was, how do you reconcile these 2 things? How can you get the work done if people can't pay conservators to do it? Yes, we all know there's grant money, but there wasn't enough grant money before January 20th, 2025, and there is even less now. There are, of course, many organizations that have been teaching folks to do their own preventive conservation. The image on the screen is a workshop run by the UCLA Getty program and was presented at another session earlier this afternoon. And the list on your right is just a few of the others who have been doing this work. But what about all those people who have objects they want to clean and repair? What about all those organizations that are in the same situation? Connecting with the conservators at the Harpers Ferry Center was an aha moment for me with regard to this question. I don't have the numbers exactly right, but the National Park Service has over 300 sites in their care and something like a dozen conservators to handle the conservation, a seemingly impossible task. They figured out years ago that rather than doing all the conservation work themselves, they needed to be teaching techniques to others, empowering others to care for the collections entrusted to them. Here, you see them teaching some combination of curators, registrars, archivists, museum technicians, maintenance staff, interpretive staff, and archaeologists to flatten, folded, and rolled objects. And here, they are at Fort Moultrie and Fort Sumter teaching canon care. The people they are teaching do not have conservation degrees and have no intention of ever getting conservation degrees. They just want the skills to care for their collections and be part of the solution. And not only are the NPS colleagues doing this teaching, they have created a conservagram outlining the flattening workshop that you can use if you want to do something similar. And conveniently, it's ready and waiting for a community conservator. In one of my many versions of this talk, I had a few more stories about conservators who are teaching non-conservators to clean and repair their own objects. But sadly, I had to cut them out to keep to at least close to 20 minutes. So I'll share just one more, one that I learned about in the last couple of months, one that really excited me because it's about teaching everyday people to care for their treasured objects. These photos are from that project. Olivia Tannenbaum designed it during her collaborative conservation fellowship at the Midwest Art Conservation Center. Olivia and preventive conservator Nicole Graybow created and delivered a workshop on the care of silver at the Mung Museum in St. Paul, Minnesota. As part of the workshop, Olivia developed a leaflet called The Care of Mung Silver. Realizing that some of the language was very technical, and in order to better reach her target audience of Hmong elders, she then filmed a short video that she had translated into Hmong. She has a poster here at the conference where you can learn more about the materials they were using to polish the silver. And so perhaps you reconcile these two things with this. Much of what conservators do can be taught to others in workshops, and many conservators are already doing this teaching. And so our 4 guiding thoughts became 5. I'm going to close with a few notes on how Anisha and I have been moving from vision to actions. In the winter of 2023, we got an invitation to begin testing our ideas. The book pictured on the left tells the story of a family that migrated from Vietnam to the US. There are a couple of moments where treasured photos and treasured documents take center stage. One of the librarians who participated in our cross-disciplinary meetings asked if we would run a program on the care of cultural heritage in several of her libraries as part of their NEA Big Read project. We ran a version of what many of us call Conservation Clinic, but in this format. We sat in small groups, and each person shared the story of their object and why it was important to them, as well as 1 or 2 things that they were hoping to learn about how to care for it. After all participants shared, we started to address the care questions, and everyone shared how they care for similar things at home. The goal was to find solutions for the person with the object, solutions that each person could bring to fruition. This was often not the museum standard, but it was always what the person thought would work for them. That invitation led to a few others, and we now have done 8 iterations of this type of clinic. In September of 2024, we submitted a first-round proposal to the IMLS that, if successful, would make it possible for Anisha to work as a community conservator in a Delaware library for 2 years. She would do the work I've described, but also these things. We made it through the first round and had submitted the full proposal for round 2, and then 1 week later, the IMLS had its doors closed, and we received an email saying that proposal review is on indefinite hiatus. But we are not giving up, and I'm not going to leave you on that note. Right after we submitted our first IMLS grant, we received a small grant from the Delaware Humanities, which let us take another step forward. We were able to hold 3 hands-on workshops about the protection, cleaning, and repair of treasured objects. So I want to close with this 3-minute and 47-second video about those workshops.
The vision of the Community Conservation Initiative is to make it possible for each and every person to have free access to conservation services. So this includes disaster response planning and recovery, conservation treatment workshops, and consultations for local small and mid-sized organizations. So what you're seeing in this video is footage of library patrons and employees of small institutions learning to clean and repair objects that have meaning to them. These workshops are one example of the services a community conservator will provide.
The object I brought today is a box that was given to my great aunt Josephine Nelson in Corning, New York. Her brother must have given it to her because he had some medical issues. He couldn't do much, and she was always doing things for him. So my mother got it from her, and she had it filled with a whole bunch of little things, and she gave them to me. So I'm trying to put it together and keep it, and pass it down through my girls so they can have this nice box. So the reason I brought it to this is to get it cleaned up because it had a lot of dirt and everything inside, because those were made in 1905. So I came to see if I could get it tidied up, and I could, and I found that she had her initials were there, JN for Josephine Nelson. And on the inside, I can repair soon the little linen that's in there. So I'm going to have to repair that, and this place is going to help me do that and show me how to clean it up, and that's what I'm here for.
I've always loved the idea of fixing things that have such intrinsic value because of the stories that are passed down with them. And so when I saw the opportunity to learn how to do that right instead of just kind of winging it like I do at home, just so grateful for the opportunity. So I feel really, really privileged to get to learn how to put these pieces back together and in a way that I'll be able to actually use it and maybe pass it down to another generation. Being able to do this has been really a wonderful opportunity, and I know that there's so many more people that can be impacted by just this one little thing that really brings me closer to my heritage and my family.
So during these workshops, I, as a second-year graduate student at the Winter University of Delaware program in art conservation, have been able to use the types of conservation techniques that I have learned in school over the last 2 years and kind of distill them into a way that makes them more accessible to people who want to care for their own objects. And this has been such a cool experience because it's so different from what we do in our laboratory setting, which can often be a little isolated, a little sequestered. But here we're at a library, we're meeting people from the Delaware community and getting to exchange stories, talk about the objects that we love and why we love them and why we want to keep them around and then how we keep them around.
There are many ways that you can support the Community Conservation Initiative. We're recruiting partner institutions to employ community conservators. We're looking for organizations and foundations to fund a wide range of activities and resource development. And we have opportunities for conservators and collection care professionals to write workshop plans. Please visit our website and contact us via email for more information. The end. Thank you.
Okie dokie, Marie is telling me we are opening it up for questions right now. So if you have a question, please come forward. Please also speak into the microphone if you have a question. I believe they're on. If not, I will come and turn them on with you for our recording and online versions. Yes, go ahead.
I think that's on. Is that on? Yes. Mm-hmm. For your workshop that was just in the video, did you use or think about you introducing the participants to a little more, off-the-shelf materials, which is okay? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about making sure that we're using materials that people already have at home or can get at Michael's or Home Depot or.
What are some examples of those?
So in terms of silver polishing, either there's something called Twinkle silver polish that you can buy at your local hardware store, or a jewelry polishing rag that you can get, or actually we were even polishing silver with Arm & Hammer toothpaste and a toothbrush.
Yeah.
I worked with our furniture conservators to talk about glues that they would purchase from the local hardware store for wood repair.
Just like a high
And actually, so on the website, there are a couple sheets of, on my website, there's a page dedicated to the Community Conservator Project, and there's a sheet with some other materials. But that is absolutely the goal, that the materials need to be things that they can get for not much money.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. My name's Chris Kanasan. I'm in private practice in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we're in a conservation desert where I am. And a lot of what I do is educate people about how to take care of their own stuff. And something I've been thinking a lot about is, where is the line between what I do and what they do? And oftentimes I'm in communication with them about that line, and what we both feel comfortable and confident with, especially when we're talking code of ethics as a private practice conservator. There are times when I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you that because I can't be sure that this will go well. And that is, as a conservator, that's my job. I need to know that this will go well. So wet cleaning is something I never broach with private clients. Have you thought at all about the line between what we train people to care for versus what we're like, this might just be something that is a little bit touchy, because that is important education for them to know as well, right?
Yes, yeah. So the guiding, definitely an issue, definitely something that we think about all the time, right? But thinking about the fact that where the focus is on people who are never going to pay for the conservation in the first place. And so then, but it feels very unethical to withhold information that would help them, that they need in order to care for their things. So the idea is that by having somebody who has some conservation training, is receiving a salary, so they're not, people don't need to pay them for that information, then they can provide that information and they can guide people. And I think the reality is that people will wind up doing things that damage objects. It's going to happen, right? I mean, as conservators, we do things and we damage objects and then we put them back together, right? And so I think it's going to happen, but the focus is absolutely on, we like democratizing the information and sharing it as widely as possible. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it very much does. Thank you so much. I'm going to contact you. We're going to talk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? I'm Madison. I'm a conservation technician in the Bay Area. More of a comment than a question. I just wanted to commend you on your vision.
Thank you.
I think in times of despair, not only in times of despair, but vision is something that so much of us lack, and that gives us such hope for the future. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say that I recently learned of a very similar program at the California Art Museum gathering earlier this year. It's called the Glib Museum in Arcadia. And a couple things I learned from them. These were museum conservators who were paid both by the museum and the library to host sessions like this in the library. And a few things that I learned from them that I think are valuable are that they didn't have an end time in their program. They just kind of let things happen organically. And we asked, how long would it take? They laughed. Like, sometimes it's 1.5 hours, sometimes it's 5 hours. And I know we don't all have the luxury for that, but I thought that was very interesting. And through that, They worked with the community center that was across the street to let people know that these were happening. And through that, they learned that one of the most pressing needs was for digital conservation of people's home videos. And so now they're getting funding for that and expanding that program. And I think that really came from a willingness to sit with the community and not put, limitations on generosity and community. So.
Thank you so much.